I'm really excited to have on the SYCK Career Podcast today, Malorie Nicole. I met Malorie about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago, down in Austin, Texas, when I was there for a marketing summit with a company that is helping me get my YouTube ads out there, which one day you will see. I'm lagging a little bit behind that. That's on me. I got to get in the right mindset to take action, and maybe Malorie will help me with that. But the reason why I wanted to have Malorie here is she is an esteemed career coach, or actually a multi-certified coach to entrepreneurs, CEOs, and high performers who want to create expansion in their world and live their full potential. And I'm plagiarizing, I'm reading that from your website. But Malorie really focuses on mindset. And while she focuses often on entrepreneurs and CEOs, it's very applicable to those people that are seeking jobs. So that's why she's on our podcast, and not just because she's a cool person that I met over lunch in Austin. But with that, Malorie, introduce yourself to the SYCK Career audience here.
Thank you so much. I think you introduced me wonderfully, and I appreciate that. We did. We met at a SYCK event, and we had some SYCK conversations, and now we're here continuing the thread. So thank you for having me on the show. And, I love what your message is and what you talk about and how you help people, and something that we found from our conversation and how it relates to the work that I do with people is just that mindset is really a thread in all of our lives. There's always room for expansion. There's always room to grow our thoughts about what's possible for our life. And so much of it applies to our career. You and I spend more time likely working than we do with our family members, because that's just kind of how society is set up. And being able to give the attention to having a really good career experience and making sure that we're opening up opportunities to use our gifts and be in a position that really fulfills us is so important.
Yeah, and that's great. And I love how you focus on mindset. I was a PhD psychology dropout, so I'm a big believer of mindset and how your mind plays into whatever you're trying to achieve. And the reason, talk about the reason why you were at that conference, actually, at that specific marketing conference.
So Malorie Nicole is someone that I've been coaching for a few years. He's just a phenomenal mind in the online business and marketing space. He is usually 10 steps ahead of everybody else. And he hired me a few years ago to just help keep him in peak performance. And that's something that I've seen, that people like that, people with very successful companies and businesses that are working really, really well, they invest in themselves even when nothing is necessarily wrong. They just keep saying, yes, 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 I want more. I'm going to keep going. I want to know where else I can take my life and my business that I haven't thought about. And investing in my performance is a huge, huge part of that growth that I know is possible for me. And he thinks like that.
Yeah. And Alaric is very inspirational, big visionary. He convinced me to spend a shit ton of money with him and his marketing organization. And I'm excited about the results that he's going to help me deliver. I know some of that's with him, but I also the fact that he was open to that coaching and guidance and that growth mindset, that he invited you there to observe. And I'm sure you gave him some feedback on that. So most of your clients are CEOs or entrepreneurs. Is that true?
That is true. I do sometimes work with people on the team after I have been working with a business owner for quite some time, and we have a good relationship, and they might come to me and say, hey, I think you might be able to help one of my C-level people because they're a really integral part of where we're going next. Would you mind working with them for a little while? So it floats. But the thing about the work is that I would say it's more somebody that has that insatiable drive to succeed.
Yeah. And having that drive, having that motivation is critical. And I work with a lot of people that are trying to get their next job, trying to get a better job, trying to get an awesome job. And they're trying to succeed with their goal. I know you focus a lot on mindset. What are some of the common challenges that you see with individuals that are holding them back, either as an entrepreneur, but probably could be aligned with someone that's looking for achieving any goal, whether it's entrepreneurship goal, landing a great job at Google, getting their next promotion? What are some of those, I guess, obstacles or areas of friction that you often see in people that hold them back?
So, first, before we get into it, I want to just invite all the listeners to consider that some of the stuff that I'm talking about might not necessarily feel like you're someone that's experiencing this because we're speaking to the unconscious. We all have unconscious beliefs that drive our behaviors that we're not necessarily always aware of. So the word I'm about to say, you might be listening to this and you go, yeah, I don't know, that doesn't really resonate with me. I don't really struggle with that. And that word is rejection. Maybe you're somebody that doesn't really see yourself as someone that struggles with rejection. You know, you can take it really well. It's not that big of a deal. That's never really been an issue for you. But if we go into the expansion side of it and we ask, well, how much of your energy is spent right now putting yourself out there for new opportunities, whether you own a business or whether you're looking for a job? How much are you putting into creating more expansion in your world, creating bigger results? And if you look at that and you gauge yourself on a scale from 1 to 10, and it's like maybe a 4 or 5, that is an indicator that there's an unconscious fear of rejection showing up in your life. So even though you don't necessarily walk around and feel like you're someone that struggles with rejection, you know, I work with a lot of people who make a lot of money. They probably don't identify as somebody who is struggling with rejection. But if we're avoiding that and avoiding that growth, that is the unconscious belief that's showing up that's creating a limitation in our success.
So I'll make your job a lot easier for you, Mallory. I work with a lot of people that are dealing with tons of rejection. And just to give you a little data point here, I'm someone who's had a modicum of success over the course of my career. The last time I looked for a job, seriously looked for a job, I applied to 300 different roles. I got 47 interviews from them. I got 20 offers. I got 20 to the final round and 5 offers. That means I was rejected 295 times out of 300 times. So I'm dealing with people often that are rejected countless amount of times, and it's very debilitating. It's very distracting. It's very uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good. We have lots of people listening to this that are applying for jobs, and the whole nature of applying for jobs is at the top of the funnel, you're competing with 100 people. At the bottom of the funnel, if you get into the final round, you're still competing with 3 or 4 people. So the odds are still stacked against you. So the odds are you are going to get rejected. What tips or advice do you have for people to persevere through that and not let that railroad you?
Emotional management. The most successful people that I know and that I work with do not let the emotions of something like that attach to the identity of what they know they're capable of and who they are. You might give yourself a little bit of time to process and work through. Okay, that's the 50th application that's gone through that got denied. You might give yourself a little bit of time to process that because there is a healthy processing of emotions. When we don't process any of our emotions, sometimes we put all our emotions like in a backpack and we're carrying it around and then they end up blowing up in our face when we least expect it. So you do need to process what's going on. The key is you're not carrying what just happened into the next application that you're filling out. You're not carrying it into the next interview. You're not carrying the past with what could be in the future. And the most successful people that I know, that I work with, they continue to put themselves out there. They are just a little bit more well-equipped for rejection. It's not that they don't fail. It's not that they don't make mistakes. They just put themselves out there a little bit more than society typically does.
I think that's great. And if you think rationally, so you're saying separate your emotions from that. And I'm a big fan of, if anything, I get criticized for not having emotion. I'm kind of like Dr. Spock sometimes. So I need to work on that a little bit. But for people that have challenges potentially separating the emotion, what I try to rationally tell them is that, hey, you just think about what the process is of looking for a job, and you're competing with hundreds. If you're applying to top companies, sometimes thousands of candidates. So the odds are you are going to get rejected. So logically, makes total sense that this rejection will occur. How do you recommend for people to separate that emotion, which could say, hey, this is me. I'm sick and tired of getting rejected. I'm a loser, or whatever people are saying in their head, versus, you know what, this is just the process and I got to keep on trucking. So like, how do you help people get past that of blaming themselves versus understanding that it's just the systemic situation and also a factor of taking that risk? Like you're putting yourself out there, and that's a potential consequence that you might get rejected, and big effing deal.
So what I would take someone through is a process to do some identity work. I'd be curious to ask you, you went through, what'd you say, 300 applications?
300 applications.
300 applications. So that 200th application that you went through and you didn't get what you wanted from it, what did your mind say?
So what my mind said is, what can I do better? So I tried to maybe tweak my resume. I tried to, which wasn't actually a good use of time, but I did try that. I tried to understand if I'm applying for the right roles, but
Mm-hmm.
I kind of went through that thought process quickly. And then I
Mm-hmm.
just submitted application number 201 and 202 and 203.
That tells me that you have the identity of someone who's an achiever because you didn't sit in the pool of the mess of what you could have. It's always identity work. Somebody that is struggling to know their values and to know what they have the capability to do and bring to the world, they get that 200th application back and they just throw the towel in the corner and say, you know what? I'm done. But when you have the identity and you work on that foundation of who am I and what do I really want to experience and what do I really want to contribute, you go fill out application number 201. You just keep going.
I'm guessing I know the answer here, but identity is something that is fixed or something that can be changed?
I love that question because that's the other part that goes back to the rejection concept and the limitations that sometimes we don't even realize we're putting on ourselves. Sometimes we're not even aware of things that we say of like, oh, that's just how I am. There's nothing.
I hate that.
Right. You hate it because you know it's not true.
Yeah.
It's totally something that we can change. It's totally something that can shift. Our personalities and our innate ability to succeed is a skill that we develop. So a lot of people talk about mindset work as if it's just something that you do the deep integrative belief work and you do the hypnosis and you do the processing and you do the exercises and then you go on your way. What I have found in my own learning over the years is that it's more of a blend. That stuff is really important. And then it's also about the application piece. It's also about the 15 minutes after that application 200 comes in and the choice that you make and the action that you take to move forward. Maybe you figure out, oh, I am more of an emotional person and I need to give myself 10 minutes to just like scream and yell and be like annoyed and frustrated and move that emotion through me. So then I can clear my mind and get back to groundedness and move forward. Maybe for someone like you, you're like, yeah, that doesn't resonate with me. I don't really need to scream and yell. I don't experience that. I'm good to just keep moving forward. There's not a right or wrong to this. It's just figuring out, all right, am I doing the identity work? And then am I also looking at what is the pattern and the decision, the behavior that I'm allowing afterwards? What is the action that I've actually taken afterwards so that I don't get stuck and I don't get stagnant? And that can always change and can always grow. And that's why it's just plain and not true. There's no such thing as that it's fixed.
I 100% agree. I'm a big fan of Carol Dweck. I'm sure you are too.
Mm-hmm.
Mindset. She talks about growth mindset. I get flack sometimes when I talk to people about this of like, hey, just shake it off. Get off your ass and get another application in. And they're like, you're a privileged white dude. You were able to afford top school. You're cisgen, hetero, whatever. Like I'm very privileged and I've not had as much friction to make some of these changes as I know others have. Alaric also, I don't know everything about him, but he appears to be a white dude, a white male that speaks English in America. He was able to afford to go to some good schools and have the support that he needs. So maybe for someone like him, someone like me, it's easier potentially for us to get the right mindset and to have the right support. Do you see differences based on privilege in terms of how difficult it is or the challenges that individuals have of changing that identity and changing that mindset?
That privilege is real. We can't deny that. If we continue to focus on the fact that privilege is real and we get stuck in a box saying it's real, we disempower ourselves for what's possible for us. So what I've seen in my work is that, I do have a lot of clients that are really successful, and some of them, I'm not speaking about Alaric when I say this, but some of the clients that I've worked with they're dyslexic or they have autism, or they're a little bit off of the spectrum. And that has been really limiting for them in their career to a certain degree until they figured out how to turn it into a superpower. You know, if you go back to their schooling, maybe it wasn't so great, because dyslexia is really, really, really a huge challenge when it comes to doing well in traditional schooling methods that we teach here in America. So there are limitations. But I use the same process. It's a very, very similar process with a community here in Charlotte for underprivileged people that are trying to figure out how to build the skills to start getting their life on track. It's nonprofit work. People aren't paying me. It's give back work. It's the same methodology. Now, I speak to them a little bit differently because they're in a different situation in their life, but it works. And there's a reason that it works, because we're working with the brain, we're working with the mind, we're working with creating more expansive thought on what's possible. And anytime you do foundational work with someone, you're going to see results.
So you say you speak to them a little bit differently. Can you elaborate?
Well, their situations are different. So, they're not running the stresses are different. They're not running companies with 50 employees dealing with the stress of like, what's the next decision I have to make? Right. They're trying to figure out how to create an identity of what does consistent income look like? And let's get a roof over my family's head, and let's have, security in my life. Mm-hmm. And the thing that I know that helps them the most is the identity work that we do. It's the foundational components. I have to speak directly to them about all of what you're saying, because most of them are born into underprivileged families. Most of them are not white men that are 45 years old. They are the ones that are dealing with all of the things that you're talking about. Yet when they do the foundational work and they do what we're talking about, they make the shifts, they make the changes, they go get their GEDs, they start getting jobs, they start finding a home that works, that's right for their family. I just talked to the organizer of one of the organizers, so not the owner of the company, but I talked to the person that's the integral piece between me and the work that I do with them. I talked to her last week, and she was sharing a story about how, after the last time I did a talk with them, one of the girls really saw herself through a different lens, and she decided, it's time to get off the streets and go get my kids back. Well, now she's got a roof over her head. She's got her kids back. She stopped the toxic behavior that was keeping her kids away from her because of the foundational work. This stuff works regardless of whether you are broke and trying to get to stage 1 in life, or you are at running an 8-figure company and you want to take it to hundreds of billions of dollars. Wherever you are, we all have brains.
So a key part of your mindset work is getting people comfortable with rejection and kind of brushing that off. Are there other key aspects or themes that you see with people in terms of when you're working on their mindset shifts that help them to peel back, I think, the barriers and move forward towards achieving their goals? Like I know Alaric has a goal to create $1 billion business. So he has big, lofty goals. But if you're someone who wants to get a job at Microsoft, or you're someone who wants to get a great job, 6 figures, what are some other things in people's mind besides like the fear of rejection? Or I don't know if it's fear of rejection or just how people handle rejection, but what are some other mindset areas that you typically see with people that hold them back?
So that's a big question.
It's a big podcast, although we don't have all that time.
That's a big question. Can we try and focus it in on maybe like what your clients are experiencing so that I can give you a more solid answer so it doesn't feel too up in the air?
So I have some clients that I generally, when I work with clients, I say, okay, let's create a target list of companies.
Okay.
And I give them a list of 100 to look at. And top of the list are the Googles and Microsofts and Salesforces and Meta. Even though they've had layoffs, it's still a good company to work for. And I see people not putting those on the list. And sometimes they don't put it on the list because they're like, oh, Meta's an evil company and they're doing more negative for the world than positive. That is an understandable response. But sometimes I get responses of, I'm not putting Google on there because they would never hire me. So
they already don't believe it's possible.
Correct.
Okay. That's a great place to go. So one of the things that I really like to help people with, business owners love using this tool, but I'll say I could see this being effective with your clients too. If you don't believe something's possible, the likelihood that it's going to happen diminishes so much. Yep. And that's not to say that things can't happen that we don't think are possible. It's not exactly black and white. But if you don't believe something is possible, you diminish your behavior to go out and get it. And there's a really good chance you're never going to achieve what you have the potential to achieve. So a very easy tool that anybody can do is to write out a journal entry, or write out, some people are like, they think about journal entry, and then they think about when you're 12 years old and you have a diary and you're writing like stuff that happened at school when you were in middle school. Writing is such an effective tool for high performers because when you write, you're accessing a different part of your brain than you do when you're just thinking or talking about something. Mm-hmm. So what I like to have people do is write a journal entry as if it's 1 year from now. So right now, today, as we are recording this podcast, it's December 9th, 2022. So what you would do is you'd write a journal entry on December 9th, 2023, as if you are celebrating all of the things that happened in the last 365 days. So maybe you don't think Google will hire you, right? Maybe right now you don't think that's possible. But if you go get your notebook and you start writing about how it's so incredible, you're writing it as if it's happened. You're not writing it from a place of, I want this to happen. You're celebrating that it's happened. I'm so excited. I finally got the dream job that I've been wanting. I finally work for Google. I cannot believe how exciting this experience has been. And you really get into the feeling states of what it's like to be working for that company. You automatically start to change your behavior and make different decisions to get you to that place. If you write all about that, you're going to go apply. You're going to look at your resume and you're going to say, you know what? I'm not showing my value for what I really have to contribute. I haven't touched on these few key things because that's a huge one. When you ask the bigger question of like limitations, a lot of times people aren't really just expressing the value that they have to contribute. And my guess is when you look at people's resumes that come through and you talk to them and you have a conversation with them about what they've done in their career, they're not being as expressive as they could be about their accomplishments and about what they can bring to the company if they were hired. Is that possible?
Oh, yes. And writing it down is some SYCK advice that I want to call out. And the part of people not expressing their strengths and they pull it back. I just spoke to a client the other day. He went to UT, University of Texas undergrad. He had a master's from Columbia. And he also had a master's from Stanford. Very smart dude. He didn't put the Columbia one on there. I was like, well, put that on there. Like, even though it's like, I went to Columbia, so I'm a little biased, but it's not as prestigious as Stanford. But fuck, that's Columbia. He spent a lot of money. Actually, I think he got a scholarship for it. He's like, oh, I think I'm overdoing it about all my degrees. I was like, you got a degree from Columbia. Like, do not undercut that.
I think I'm overdoing it. That right there is the limitation. Part of your whole life experience is to be really bold and expressive about what you have to contribute. Because the more you contribute, the more I contribute, the more anybody contributes to what their gift is and what they have the capability to bring, the better the planet gets, the more we raise the standard for everybody. And it's just a good thing that happens. So if you start to look at that as an identity thing of like, oh, it's actually my job to be really bold about why I'm here and what I'm capable of, you'll write the dang resume to express all of the things that you know you're really damn good at.
Yeah. And I like the idea of writing it down. Something that I encourage people to do is not only write it down and hold themselves accountable, but share it with others. You don't need to share your whole journal with people. But if you say, hey, I really want to work at Google and I'm working damn hard to do that. If you share that with other people, first off, you may run into some people that may work at Google or may know someone at Google or may give you some tips or may tell you that, like, hey, you don't want to work there for some reason. So by sharing that, it not only helps other people help you, but it almost gives you a little bit of accountability because you're sharing that, you're making yourself vulnerable, that, hey, I'm sharing my goal with other people. I'd love your thoughts on that.
It makes it more real. It makes it more real. And I see that with, going from the experience of working with people that are in poverty to people that are the top 1% in the population. It's okay for all of us to be expressive about what we desire. We should not feel shame for wanting what we want. The more you want what you want, and the more you're clear about that, the more value you're going to give to receive the things you want. And if you're giving a bunch of value, you deserve to receive the things that you want.
And once people have established their goals, written them down, shared them, what are some things that you've seen potentially hinder people from taking action on that? So I think that often is a hard part of clearly articulating your goals. But once you have that, so making sure that when you look back at your journal entry on December 9th, 2023, that you've actually made some like either you're working at Google then, or you've made some significant headway between now and the next 365 days. What advice do you have for people to make sure that they're continuously taking the actions to achieve their goals?
Support and structure. And that gets into, like I was saying before, it's not just the mindset piece. It's not just like the deep belief work. It's also, what is the structure that you're setting up for yourself to revisit this? Is this something that you're just going to do on a Thursday evening and then you're not going to look at it for a year? That's great. It's probably not going to work, right? So what is the structure you're setting up in your mental fitness to succeed the way you want to succeed? I talk about it the same way that people talk about going to the gym. Your mental fitness should be something that is on your calendar. Your mental fitness is part of what moves the needle forward. So that's the system and the structure piece of it. And then there's also support. I'm obviously a little biased, but I'm a big believer in hiring support, hiring coaches, hiring someone to be that third party and stretch your thinking and call you out on your BS and allow the mind to open up a little bit more to keep you in that elevated state, keep you in your peak performance so that you can get to where you want to go.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually not a fan, even though I am a coach and I help people with that. I'm trying to figure out ways to enable me to like lose a job and like have people figure it out. But I also know that it's not that easy. I've had between shrinks, psychologists, social workers, career coaches, life coaches, I've had lots of help in my life. And my wife, who's amazing, Melanie, who's a doctor and also a great supporter of me. So I do understand that that support is definitely needed. But I think I'm also trying to figure out ways, tips and tools that people can use that either are not ready for coaching yet or can't afford coaching or want to try to do it on their own. So are there some hacks that you give people? Like the journal is awesome. Are there other hacks or tips for people of either setting their goals or making progress against their goals besides hiring you as an amazing coach?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I say support, I don't just mean that you need to hire me as a coach, right? Or you as a coach. I mean support. How are you elevating your environment? Who are you talking to about this?
Mm-hmm.
Do people in your life know that this is something that you want? Or are you the only person in your world that is aware that this is what you're going after?
Yeah.
So a very easy thing you could do right now is start talking to people about, and you kind of already touched on this, start talking to people about the desires and the things that you're going after, because you're expanding your support as you're doing that. And maybe hiring a coach isn't for you right now, but is there a meetup group that you can go to with C-level execs or people in your community? Is there a Facebook group? Facebook is free. Is there a Facebook group you can be a part of for people that are looking for jobs and people that are in your career? What are you doing to stimulate the mind about what is possible? Most of the time, people don't reach their goals because they're not giving enough energy to the things that help them move that forward. What content are you listening to? Are you listening to this podcast on a weekly basis? Are there 4 others that you also like that you're listening to help you keep thinking and expanding and growing and dreaming about this job that you want or where you want to go next? Or are you binge watching Netflix all weekend long going, I don't know, I'll worry about it Monday? What is your commitment level to this? A really easy way to gauge that is to look at the content that you're taking in. We're all content people these days. The world has shifted. We scroll, we listen, and we read. What are you scrolling? What are you listening to? And what are you reading about? Yep. It's this identity shift of thinking about your mental fitness as if it's just as important as your health. If you start thinking about it that way, you're going to start reaching your goals. It is just going to happen.
And I love what you're talking about talking to people as well. And that's a key element of the growth framework that we use to help people get jobs. We talk about goals, realistically assess your strength, and then the O is outreach. You cannot do this on your own. Find those people that can help you. Do you have any tips or advice on how people can find or approach individuals that are frankly very willing to offer advice? A lot of people like to offer advice. You do that. You do that for free with your nonprofit. You gave me some good advice at the table when we were just having lunch about some things. So people like to give advice. So what tips do you have for people that are either hesitant to reach out to others or don't know how to reach out to others?
Yeah. So I would go into more of an objective, strategy mode with that. And look at this thing as, okay, so the idea isn't right now that we're trying to get you a job. The idea right now is that we're trying to get you advice. We're trying to make sure that you have the advice that you want, that you have the leaders that you want to listen to, that you're getting that content that you want to listen to. So versus thinking, how do I need to get my next job? Your job right now is, how do I spend the weekend scrolling, researching, looking at different influencers, looking at different thought leaders, looking at different books, so that I can get a list of a few different people that I want to keep paying attention to, that I know if I keep paying attention to are going to help move me forward. Yep. So we just want to minimize the action and the result that someone's looking for and say, okay, well, what's the first step to that? You don't necessarily need to have a interview with Google right now, but the first step is, my job in the next 7 days is to find my advice. And I'm going to carve out time on my calendar to do that, because when we don't put it on our calendar, it really likely doesn't happen. It's just kind of where we're at, and it's okay. It helps us. Our calendar is supposed to be that structure and that support to help us get to where we want to go. So put it on your calendar. You know what? Saturday from 10 to 1, I'm going to look for advice. And that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And the amazing thing, I know you referred to Facebook, but for people that are seeking careers, LinkedIn is phenomenal for that. They have 875 million people on the platform. You can go find the 190,000 people that are now employed at Google, and you can see how to reach out to them. Like, you can see who they are, because people self-report on LinkedIn where they're working, what their title is, where they live. Unlike Facebook, sometimes people share stuff and they don't. LinkedIn is a great platform for that, to build that bridge.
Absolutely.
And again, going back to your initial point about rejection, yeah, you may reach out to a handful of people, and maybe a bunch of them are going to reject your request for advice or support, but some of them are going to say yes, and shake off the rejection.
And it's the intention right there, Alan, and what you just said. When our intention is, I need this person to land me a job, that's like a really big ask. Yeah. And then there's more pressure for us. We've made this internal pressure that when I have the conversation with this person, it has to be perfect. I have to say all the right things. I have to make sure that I show them what I'm capable of so that they can go get me the job, right? The idea isn't necessarily that big thing that I want the job. We really just start to look at, Am I expanding the conversations with who I'm speaking to about the things that I want? And am I broadening my world? If you broaden your world, you're going to get the job. If you have that attachment every day, that grip that we call it, if you're gripping I need the job, it's going to be so much harder to get the job.
Yep, exactly. And wait, did you say grit with a T or grip?
Grip with a P. So when you are like gripping the outcome so hard, you're actually working from scarcity. And when we work from scarcity, we're not as effective. We're not operating from that brain state that sees solutions, that can see the bigger picture. So we have to detach a little bit. The detachment of the thing that we want, you're not detaching it saying, it's not possible, I can't get there. But you are paying attention to the intention of how you're showing up to conversations, what you're doing, the action that you're taking. And it's a whole lot easier to go, okay, this weekend, I'm going to build out my world of people that are influencing me about this advice that I'm looking for, instead of, I need the job yesterday.
Yep. Awesome, Mallory. Well, we're running low on time, so I have 2 questions for you.
Yeah.
One question is, how can people find you? You're a wealth of information, wealth of knowledge. How can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
The easiest way to find me is to go to abundantlyclearpodcast.com. That will take you to the podcast page on my website, and you can get to me that way. You can also get to me www.malorie-nicole.com, but I spell Mallory a little different than a lot of Mallorys, so abundantlyclearpodcast.com is the easiest way.
Awesome. And secondly, this is something new that I'm trying. Help me come up with a good title for this episode. You shared lots of great insights here. I want people to click on this and to listen to this. If you had a catchy name or title for this episode, and I'm giving you some preamble here. I see your head thinking, what would be some good copy, a good title for people to listen to this? Because you spent 40 minutes with me very generously. I want people to hear this.
Hack your career success with the power of the mind.
Awesome. That is the podcast
landed?
name. It landed.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mallory. Thank you for all the SYCK advice. Thank you for taking the time to share some thoughts and perspectives with me down in Austin and to continue the conversation. And thanks for all you do with helping people focus on their mindset and make progress in their entrepreneurial careers.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Thanks a lot, Mallory.